Hi, welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe to see more upcoming videos. I sliced one board of walnut to create book-matched panels for each side. I made a backgammon board template and traced the slots with the utility knife on all four ends of the board. Then used a set of chisels to carve the slots out. I'm using a small brush and epoxy to seal all slots to prevent any bubbles. After letting the epoxy set for a few hours, I applied hot glue all around the slots to prevent the epoxy from overflowing. I poured equal parts of epoxy into a plastic cup and mixed it for a few minutes. For the slots, I'm using the ancient copper and red gold pigments for the epoxy. I first filled each space halfway, then came back and completed the pour. This will ensure that the slots are equally and correctly filled. And now it's time to mix and pour the ancient copper epoxy. After both pours were completed, I let the epoxy set for a couple of days. At this stage, I decided to go outside because it involves a lot of dust. So I began by removing the hot glue and then sanded the boards with 120 grit sandpapers. Finally, I sprayed the panels with water to prevent the epoxy from overheating. This was the most challenging part of this build. Then I moved back inside to the shop and followed the same steps to trace and carve this geometric design I chose for the center of each board. After tracing all lines on the board using carbon paper, I filled each section with a different color for easy reference when I start carving and filling them with epoxy. Carved and filled each line separately until I got all lines filled with different epoxy pigments. Here I'm showing you the different pigments I use for this centerpiece. My phone broke and I lost few videos. So basically what I did was I used leftover wood from the same slab to create the frame. And I also sanded the board using 120 grits of sandpapers and moved up to 1,000 grits to give the epoxy a shine. I also opened the slots for the hinges. I decided to leave a 1/4 inch void around the outside frame and filled it with gold epoxy. I think it looks excellent with walnut. Then I applied a generous amount of pure tung oil and let it sit for 10 days to dry. Once the oil dried, I sanded the entire board with 320 grits sandpaper to remove any drippage from the oil. So after sanding and cleaning, I applied 3 coats of oil-based polyurethane. I applied each coat, let it sit for 4 hours, then lightly sanded it to remove dust before applying the next coat. The third and final coat of polyurethane, I sanded the entire board with 800 grit sandpaper. Finally, it's time to put the board together. So here I'm installing these copper hinges and the lock. I love how copper and walnut look together. So I covered the hinges with a blue paint tape to prevent them from scratching. I placed the hinges in place and then drilled pilot holes for the screws. And now it's time to install the lock. After assembling the board, I polished it with beeswax to give it a nice shine. You'll notice how the grain is matching all over. This results from using one board of walnut for the entire build and following the book match technique to slice the board in half. This is my first time building a backgammon board from scratch. I decided to make it entirely from hardwood without using veneer for the slots or the geometric design. I'm really happy with the results. Tell me what you think. 4, 6.